Lisa, we're together here, you and I, same boat.
We are.
Can we have Lisa on the screen?
We don't need to. I'm right here.
We'll have your voice.
We can have, do you want me to tell you what I was thinking about when I was thinking about art and global health?
Tell me.
Okay. So I was thinking, I was trying to get into it, yeah? So I was thinking, when I think about art, I think about creativity and futurity and horizons. I think about the freedom of creative license. I think about learning to make decisions in a forgiving medium. I think of emancipation and the becoming of the maker, the author, the voice, and which is what we need to stand proud. And when I think about global health, I think about health and wellness. I think of equity, inequality, and the ways we must address the wounds of history, and the ways in which they manifest in individual stories as unique as fingerprints. Our country may be poor, but imagination is free. Trauma impacts imagination, but arts, making, and the senses heal. If we dare to imagine, then we may have here the possibility, despite history, despite the violence of memory and that of forgetting, in the words of my friend Stéphane Martelly, we have the possibility to invent something else.
Thank you so much for a relaxing yes. Claps, 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 claps. I think you just relaxed the room.
There we go. There we go. We can just tell stories, right?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell our audience a bit of who you are?
So, I'm not a genocide survivor myself. I was born in Butare, now Huye, a long time ago. And I spent my childhood in Cologne, in Germany, in the 70s. And I arrived in Montreal, Canada, in the 80s, where I live to this day with my husband and son. I have not lived in pre-colonial or colonial Rwanda, nor was I persecuted there in the 50s or 60s or 70s, as members of my family were. I was not raised in refugee camps in neighboring countries, nor have I gone to war, nor did I experience the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda or the aftermath here. And yet, most of my adult life has been spent thinking, writing, dancing, and performing different parts of this history in order to work it through. Investigating persecution and displacement, war and genocide has felt like an obsession. These were the stories of my family, my community. And I was looking to understand us better, understand myself better, in order to live better. I was often told that that is not why people go to university or what people go to university for, but I have. So my undergraduate degree was in comparative religion. From it, I took away an understanding of life as experience between birth and death, and notions like the sacred and the profane, time and space, myth and ritual, as ways people of the world have found to make chaos into cosmos or order. It was tremendously helpful to make sense of my own experience. More so, for example, than philosophy or psychology. With those tools, I was able to analyze and understand what we, in my Rwandan community, were doing when we were dancing, cows and kings and warriors. What those dances meant for families in exile, and how they became the center around which the global diaspora mobilized during the war from 1990 to 1994. I could understand what I was doing when I choreographed, for example, and changed the movements or the themes or the music. I could attempt to express my own individual perspective with that language, but I couldn't expect for the ritual to carry the same way or have the same impact on people I was sharing that medium with when I was changing all the elements of what made it a common and shared language. Those things that make it so that wherever we are in the world, we will hear the drum, raise our arms, and fall into step. Those of us who've been raised with these steps and these rhythms lift up and clap and respond when we hear the drum. The drum is a symbol of power, and dancing together and for each other makes a visceral we. Do I continue? I can just tell you story. I was just like, okay, I can just tell you stories.
I think that we would love that. We are going to invite also our friend Nisha. Nisha, how are you doing?
Nisha.
Hello.
Hey.
Lisa and I collaborated for many years in Montreal on the commemoration of the genocide and at an Itorero in Ottawa, in the capital.
Yes.
And think about, the many conversations we would have about why is it that we return to these stories and how do they live in our bodies and how is memory transmitted overseas and land and generations. And what is it about the arts that allows us to remember and represent ourselves in the context of these histories?
Beautiful.
You taught me so much, my friend, and it is an honor to share this space with you and with Jill, who I know will also be joining us. And thank you so much, Injonge. And we are. it's quite an occasion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisha. That would be nice for you to tell us a bit about your work, about who you are, how you started working at the intersection of arts. We would love that.
Well, I will start with a little bit of the personal history in the sense that I am a child of refugees, and my parents moved. They were born in a refugee camp in India. After the division of Pakistan and India in 1947, they migrated to Canada eventually, which is where I was born. And so I grew up with a settled space, though I was, of course, on unceded land. But that awareness, I suppose, didn't arrive until much later. Mm-hmm. Like Lisa, the preoccupation with displacement, finding home, negotiating these ghosts, though I did not live them, still traveled through me and showed up in my interests, my interest in performance and the kinds of projects I would take up in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada, where I spent much of my youth. I trained as an actress, later as an educator, and then moved into drama therapy. Because in my theater work, I started to experience for myself the psychological resonances that each character would reveal. So I would step into the character of Ophelia and have, through her words, an opportunity to negotiate my own gender experience, my relationships to older men. I mean, there were all sorts of opportunities to explore relational dynamics through every character that I took on. And so I moved into drama therapy, which is right at the heart of the arts and health, of course. When we think about the arts and health, that can open up so much territory in terms of artists working in spaces of care, but also the creative arts therapies, many, many practices. So as a drama therapist, I worked primarily in Montreal with new immigrants who had moved to Montreal. As I mentioned earlier, Lisa and I collaborated for many years on projects pertaining to communities living in Montreal who had lived through histories of war, of human rights violations, of displacement. And then, at the invitation of a colleague, I moved to the United States, to New Haven, Connecticut, where I took up a position, director of community health at a post-traumatic stress center. So a good number of my years have been focused on the role of the arts, and specifically theater making, in negotiating anxiety, to the to the manifestation of post-traumatic stress disorder, or post-traumatic stress period. Towards community health programs. For example, I co-developed a program called the Miss Kendra program, which uses storytelling in schools as a means of inviting students to share the stressors that they're currently living with, and to do that within the context of a fictional story frame, while still facilitating relationships with the teachers and peers in the room. And that program, I'm pleased to say, has done really well, and it's has spread across 3 states at this point. And most recently, I've taken up a teaching post, and I've been directing the program therapy at New York University, and have opened up an initiative called the Arts and Health at NYU, which brings together researchers across our global campuses, our students, our master's and doctoral students, to be able to really collaborate on specific clinical outcomes, both promotion and on the treatment side, I should say. And I've also developed an interest on in theater and Parkinson's, the arts in Parkinson's. And so I've been doing some work in rehabilitation as well. That's a little bit of where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you for sharing about your work. I think I'm gonna ask Jill to tell us a bit about who she is. Can we have Jill on the screen? Hi, Jill. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being with us. It's such a pleasure.
Lovely to see you all today. And my heart is so full. My heart is so full to be with you all today. I have had the deep honor and pleasure of visiting Rwanda many times and working with the Red Cross in the Western region and the Rwandan Village Concept Project. Part of my heart lives in Rwanda all the time, so I'm deeply honored and so happy to be with you all today and to be engaged in this really important conversation. The connections between the arts and health are deep and long in Rwanda, as in the rest of the world. So thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. A little bit of mother and a grandmother. I'm a dancer and I'm a musician. I came to the intersection of arts and health personally as a teenager when my roommate at a performing arts boarding school was badly burned, and she taught me about how music can be so critically important in managing pain when undergoing very difficult treatment. So that experience lived deeply in me, and came to bear again when I, after having hoped to be in medicine, I hoped to study medicine, but I got waylaid by falling in love with dance. So I went down the road and became a professional dancer. And then later in my 20s, I discovered this little arts and medicine program bubbling up at a hospital in Florida where I was spending a bit of time. And so I stayed to explore that because I discovered I could be an artist in healthcare. And that was 2 of my dreams coming together. So I started working as a dancer in residence at Shands Hospital at the University of Florida. And I was also teaching on the dance faculty at the time. So I was spending my days teaching students and also working with patients who were having bone marrow transplants and dealing with mostly with long-term cancer treatment, and exploring how movement could be an instrumental and important part of the treatment that they were receiving. So I spent 16 years working as an artist in residence in the hospital, and across those years, we established the Center for Arts and Medicine at the University of Florida, which is an academic and research center. So we now offer a master's degree in arts and medicine and 2 graduate certificates. We have 90 students right now, graduate students in our programs. We also have 4 undergraduate certificates and help our undergraduate students discover the deep links between the arts and health as well. We also do loads of research in the Center for Arts and Medicine. We have 2 research labs. One is our interdisciplinary research lab, and we undertake 6 to 10 studies, all sorts of studies, from randomized clinical control trials to evidence synthesis. We do a lot of mixed methods. We use a lot of arts-based methods. We recognize that artists are incredible researchers, that they question deeply, they seek answers to questions methodically, they collect incredible data and translate that information in ways that people can really understand. We also have the Epi Arts Lab, which is a National Endowment for the Arts research lab at the University of Florida. And in that lab, we do epidemiological studies. So we study the population level associations between participating in arts and culture activities and an array of health outcomes. We look a lot at child development, and we look a lot at aging. A big part of my work is also centered in the arts and health communication. I have a PhD in arts and public health, and my studies focused on the relationships between aesthetic experiences, so that special thing that happens when we engage in the arts, and self-efficacy, our belief that we can make change, and behavior change in arts-based health communication programs. So this summer I was invited to serve as a senior advisor to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC in the United States, serving the COVID-19 task force. So I developed an array of resources to encourage public health programs in the United States to partner with artists and culture bearers to communicate important health information about COVID-19 vaccines particularly, and to engage dialogue at a community level with artists and culture bearers who are trusted members of communities. So that's been a really exciting part of my work this year, and very interesting to work with the CDC at this moment in the pandemic. So I'll stop there, Nisha. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jill. So as you can see in the audience, we have very experienced researchers. And that's very good for what we are going to close this conversation with. And I will let all of you speak, Lisa, Nisha, and Jill. There's something that looks like it's happening in this field. For example, Jill saying that now she's part of a task force to respond to a global pandemic to the CDC. There's the amazing work that Nisha is doing with Art in Health, with WHO. There's all this reception that our work with Hamwe is getting. That would be very interesting to get your observation on that. And also your understanding of what are the needs. So if there is a global momentum, where should people's attention should be directed? And on that, where should researchers look at? What do we need? Do you want to start, Lisa?
Yeah. So I want to go back to I believe that sense making is necessary to wellness and to change. And I'm thinking a lot about, like, when I think about our context here, I think about and I think about the arts, for example. I think about, for example, something like when, survivors, objectively, people who survived, but some will speak about it or about themselves as though they had died with their loved ones, for example. Yeah, and this makes for a very different experience, a quality of existence, right? And even though they're not factual about whether they're alive or dead, we can appreciate they're alive, but just barely, or that to them it doesn't feel that way, or the experience of feeling alive or not, or being rooted or not, or being satiated, secure, safe, solid. These experiences, the quality of experience, of the experience of life. Are you living a tasty life, or are you in pain? And I think that these things are deeply subjective, and art is deeply subjective. But I think that how do we make it's so that most get to have tasty lives. Yeah, that's what I like to research on. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I would love to pick up on that because I love the word tasty. It makes me think about this shift that I've experienced in the last couple of years towards looking at other performance paradigms or stories, histories of performance practice that contribute to our understanding of theater in particular can be healing and can be useful. And specifically the work of Bharata Muni, who wrote along the same time as Aristotle. The book that is attributed to Bharata Muni is the Natya Shastra, which is a performance treatise that looks at how do we create a feast out of our artistic practice so that we can taste it and the audience can taste it, so that we can eat together, so that we can sup at the table together. And, Jill got at this in her video. I know she's not with us today, but she was talking about immersive experiences and how aesthetic experience brings us in, right? It simultaneously creates aesthetic distance so that we're able to have some distance from what may be very difficult to tolerate and gain perspective. So the earliest writings around art and psychological distance, or art and psychology, some of those early writings focused on, I'm just talking about within the 20th century. Of course, there were many writings before that and oral histories that surround us around why the arts may be helpful. And so, in Ndejuru, when you ask the question of where do we need to go, there's some great archiving work to be done here to investigate the roots of this field. But I want to just point to this particular concept of aesthetic distance because I think that there's something for us to investigate there around what is it in the arts? So what are the therapeutic factors in the arts that allow us to simultaneously gain perspective and experience the flip side of that, aesthetic proximity, coming closer to our experience. So we are distanced and able to gain perspective because we're working with the third, the object, the art, our aesthetic experience, and we're able to come closer in our bodies and our minds and each other to difficult material, to material that's hard to digest, to come back to that feasting metaphor.
I just raised a Zoom hand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like this. And I was thinking about the archiving piece. And I was thinking that here in Rwanda, we have 27 years of practice that we need to document and to value. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very unique set, how do I say? It's a very unique trove of practice of the ways in which trained professionals have shifted or tweaked their practices to understand and engage with what is going on right here, with the people right here. That needs to be gathered. The ways in which those non-professional actors have done so as well. So there's a huge amount of, you were talking about archiving, of collecting to be done. And I think it's a gift that we can then take advantage of and also share, because the post-violence situation is not unique, right? We have a lot in common with a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could learn from others and also share our stories of what happened here. So for now, how to make life tasty, looking at our archive, actually 3. Nisha raised a very interesting research area about what in the arts makes healing happen or connection happen. What is it? What is that element? Jill, that would be really interesting to hear from you. Jill, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Yeah, are you able to hear me, Injonge?
Perfectly.
Oh, great. Yes, right. I also love that language, the tasty life. That's just so beautiful. And your question, Injonge, is a big one. What is needed around research? And one of the things that comes up for me that's essential as so much is happening in this at the intersections of the arts and health today. One thing that feels very important to me is that the arts not become something that they aren't, to be a part of medicine and public health, that there, as cross-sector collaboration is happening, as these two sectors are coming together, because of the sort of social hierarchies that exist differently in many parts of the world, but in the United States, there's a social and professional hierarchy that often places more value around medicine than around the arts, especially when we're thinking of health. And I think it's critically important that we create value for the wisdom and the power of the arts. They're deep bodies of knowledge in every art form. Nisha mentioned Dance for Parkinson's Disease, which is a great example. The body of knowledge that dancers hold around how to train the body, create longevity in movement, enhance balance, range of motion. Those things are critically important to how people can manage living with Parkinson's disease and to live a tastier life in their bodies, a more embodied life. So as we bring these sectors together, we really need to lift up the value of the deep knowledge of the arts. And as we then turn to researching those things, recognizing that we need to understand those things, not just by quantifying in the ways that medicine has tended to research and to value outcomes, but also to qualify, look at the qualitative aspects, learn from lived experiences that can help us understand why and how the arts can make such a difference in the lives and in the health of people, and to help us live those tastier lives, both individually and collectively. So that cross-sector collaboration feels very important to me, and the sort of more horizontal orientation of those disciplines, so that the medical folks are recognizing the deep knowledge and wisdom of artists and placing it on their very same level of value.
Extremely important. And thank you for reminding that, yes, there's a lot of here to explore and address. Unfortunately, our conversation was a bit shorter than planned, so it's the end of it. What I can say is that as UGHE is entering in that space, we are planning to do those research. I don't know if it's exactly those ones, but here on this panel are our collaborators. So there would certainly be more collaboration, more communication, more exchange from this group and some of the people that are part of our work. So too bad it was short, but I'm grateful it happened. So thank you, Jill. Thank you, Nisha. Thank you, Lisa. And so I thought that because you have this wonderful text, right? You say that you have so many stories. Do you want to? Let's close this with a Lisa story. That would be wonderful. And thank you to our audience here in Kigali and to our audience online.
All right. Another story.
Another story. Lisa.
Yeah. So. Well, okay. Maybe it's not a story, this one, but so that feeling of solidity, of safety, of power, feeling strong, proud. This idea of, is mine yours or theirs, a gratifying life, or is it an existence of pain? Those are important questions. And we have a responsibility for scholarship and practice that addresses this. So I became a psychotherapist to better understand and process my own journey and serve my community. And I moved toward art in collaboration or collaborative creative practice with life stories, because engaging a political event or a series of events like the ones we have, that touched thousands, millions of lives across multiple generations, and confining it to a one-on-one therapeutic relationship to work through trauma felt as though a lot of the social, collective, and political dimensions of the experience were lost. Most therapeutic models presume the problem or the trauma to be within the person. I want us to highlight the wounds and the work done to the in-between self and self, self and other, self and time, self and place, self and the more than, the relational wounds. Voilà.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone.